The fluorescent lights of the neon diner hummed their dying song, a sound like insects trapped in glass. The black and white checkered floor stretched empty except for one booth in a far corner where the most feared man in 3 states knelt on both knees, his tailored Armani suit creasing at the joints, his hands that had signed death warrants trembling like a man soothing a lost child. Luca Calabrese, age 47, with storm gray eyes and a scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone, pressed his large palm against his daughter's small chest. Emma, 8 years old, with dark curls and her father's same dangerous eyes, lay on the checkered floor. Her lips were blue. Her body convulsed. Vinny and Franco stood frozen 6 feet away, their black suits hanging heavy, their hands hovering uselessly near their guns. Guns that could not stop this. Money that could not bribe this. Power that meant absolutely nothing here. "Call 911, Luca commanded, his voice like venom, like thunder splitting open the night. "Call them now." But his hands already knew there might not be time. Emma's breathing came in strangled gasps. Something lodged in her throat. Her small fingers clutched at her neck like she was trying to claw away the thing that was killing her, and Luca, who had ordered men dismantled, who had watched enemies beg for mercy he never gave, felt something break open inside his chest. He tilted her head back. His fingers moved toward her mouth when the diner's back door exploded open. Sofia Harper stumbled through first, still wearing her elderly care home uniform though the collar was torn at the shoulder, though one eye was swollen purple and shutting, though finger-shaped bruises darkened her throat like a necklace no one should ever wear. She was 26 years old but looked older, looked like she had survived something that left her permanent marks. She moved past Vinny and Franco with the kind of desperation that makes people brave. She dropped to her knees beside Emma without hesitation, without fear, without asking permission from the most powerful man in Nevada. "She's choking and going into shock," Sofia said, her voice steady despite everything, despite the pain radiating through her own body, despite having just walked away from Douglas Hale in a parking lot where he had tried to make her disappear. Her voice was trembling like a candle in the wind but her hands were certain. She positioned herself behind Emma. She found the soft space just below the ribs. She pressed inward and upward with force, once, twice, a third time that was harder than mercy. A piece of dark food flew from Emma's mouth and scattered across the checkered floor. Emma gasped. Air rushed back into her lungs like a resurrection. Color flooded back into her small face, pink spreading like sunrise, like salvation, like a second chance that was not supposed to come. The child coughed, gasped, breathed. Luca stared at this beaten woman, this absolute nobody, this person whose bruised hands had just done what his money and power could never have purchased. His men stood silent. Vinny's hand remained frozen near his weapon. Franco's jaw moved soundlessly. "She'll be okay now," Sofia whispered, and then she swayed, and then her own body gave out from the weight of everything, the double shift, the abuse, the impossible choices, and she collapsed backward onto the checkered floor beside Emma. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming tomorrow. Now let us go back to the beginning, to 11 hours earlier, when Sofia Harper walked into her double shift with exactly $34 in her pocket and 72 hours to find $35,000 or lose everything she had left. The morning had arrived gray and merciless across Las Vegas. Sofia sat on the edge of her mattress in the efficiency apartment she shared with 3 other women, each of them working double shifts to survive. Her alarm had not rung yet but she was already awake, already counting her money, already doing the mathematics that never added up. $34. That was all. That was everything. A $5 bill, a 20, and 9 singles she had smoothed flat and folded into the inner pocket of her elderly care home uniform. The same uniform she had worn 5 days a week for 2 years, the fabric wearing thin at the collar, the name tag scratched and peeling. It read Sofia in letters that were half gone. She pulled on the uniform. The fabric was cool against her bruised ribs. 7 days ago, Douglas Hale had made her understand what happened to women who tried to leave him. He had done it quietly, in the privacy of the apartment they had shared until 2 weeks prior. He had taught her that the police would not help her, that when you reported a man with connections to the precinct, the officers who took your statement also took his bribes. She learned this at the emergency room. She learned it when they told her to go home, when they said there were no visible marks serious enough to warrant a report, when they said she should probably be more careful about what she said to men who loved her. But there were marks. There were always marks. She looked at herself in the small mirror above the sink. One eye was still slightly swollen, though the purple had faded to yellow. The finger marks on her throat were barely visible beneath her skin now, just dark shadows if you looked closely, just evidence if someone bothered to see. Sofia brushed her dark hair away from her face. 26 years old. She looked 40. The years of working nights, of sleeping in shifts on borrowed mattresses, of choosing between medicine and food, of watching her mother deteriorate in a hospital cardiac unit while the bills multiplied like a curse that could not be erased, these years had carved themselves into her face. She checked her phone. A message from St. Mary's Hospital, the one that made her throat close. The message said, "Final notice. Balance due on account, $35,472.16. If payment is not received within 72 hours, your mother's care will be transferred to county services and you will forfeit guardianship." Douglas Hale's lawyer had already filed the paperwork to get her removed as guardian. He had already prepared to take her mother away, to use her as leverage, to make sure Sofia never escaped him. She had 72 hours. She had $34. The math was a kind of horror that stopped her breathing. Sofia pulled on her shoes, worn sneakers, the sole separating from the canvas at the toe. She thought of another pair of shoes, a child's first pair, white and small, that she kept in a showbox beneath her mattress. She had found that pair of shoes at a shelter 5 years ago when she was younger and braver. She had kept them since, kept them like a prayer, like a promise that someday she would do something that mattered, someday she would be someone that children needed. She pushed the thought away. She could not afford hope. The bus ride to Mercy Elder Care Facility took 40 minutes. The 6 a.m. shift started at 6:30. Sofia worked until 2 in the afternoon, helping residents bathe, helping them eat, helping them remember their names, holding their hands when the pain became too much and medication took too long to arrive. The work was kind. The work paid $7.50 an hour. The work would never pay enough. At 2:15, she clocked out and walked to the Neon Diner. Her second shift of the day started at 3. The diner was nearly empty. The lunch crowd had cleared. The dinner crowd had not yet arrived. Sofia tied on her apron red and white striped fabric that had been washed so many times it felt like paper. Her name tag here also read Sofia, but the letters were clearer, the plastic still mostly intact. The manager barely looked at her. "Section 5 is yours. 2 six-tops and maybe some single tables. Don't screw up the register again." She had not screwed up the register. A customer had. But in the mathematics of minimum wage employment, her word counted for nothing. At 4 o'clock, as the sky outside the diner's windows began its slow transformation from grey to the darker grey that preceded evening, Sofia's phone buzzed again. Another message from the hospital. It read, "Final 48 hours." She continued pouring coffee. She continued smiling at customers even though smiling hurt now, even though the movement of her face reminded her that bruises lived beneath the surface, even though she was counting the hours until everything she had fought for would be taken. Douglas Hale would be waiting. He was always waiting. He was waiting to destroy what remained. He was waiting to prove that some people belonged in the dark, that some people deserved what happened to them, that some people were nobody. She did not know that across the parking lot, in a penthouse office building visible from the diner's back windows, a man was watching her. She did not know that Luca Calabrese had been investigating Douglas Hale for 6 months, that Douglas Hale worked for a woman named Margaret Harrington, that Margaret Harrington had orchestrated a plan to destabilize everything Luca had built by exploiting his single vulnerability, his protective instinct toward the defenseless. She did not know any of this. Sofia simply existed in the moment. She poured coffee. She collected tips that would never be enough. She held her $34 like a prayer. She waited for the thing that was coming to arrive. And as she placed another order with the kitchen, as the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in their dying song, the back door of the neon diner opened. A man entered with an 8-year-old girl. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the deliberate control of someone accustomed to being obeyed. He wore a suit that cost more than 3 months of Sofia's rent. A scar ran from his left eye to his cheekbone. He had the kind of presence that made the air itself stand still. Luca Calabrese took a booth by the window. His daughter Emma climbed in across from him. Neither of them knew what the next hours would bring. Neither of them knew that a woman collapsing in the parking lot with a swollen eye and a desperate heart would save Emma's life. Neither of them knew that this moment, this ordinary afternoon in an ordinary diner, was the moment everything changed. Sofia approached their table with her notepad. She did not look at Luca Calabrese. She looked at Emma. "What can I get you?" Sofia asked, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. Emma smiled. "Do you have chocolate cake?" the girl asked. Sofia nodded. "We do. It's very good." "I'll have that," Emma said. "And milk." Sofia wrote the order down. Her hands did not tremble. Her hands were steady, even as her world was collapsing. She did not notice Luca watching her. She did not notice the way his storm-gray eyes tracked the bruises on her throat. She did not notice the moment his expression changed, the moment something cold and dangerous stirred in his chest. She simply walked away to place the order for chocolate cake and milk. And Luca Calabrese sat very still in the booth by the window, watching this nobody waitress with a swollen eye and a torn uniform, and felt the first tremor of something that would reshape his entire world. 11 hours earlier, Sofia Harper clocked into Sunrise Senior Care Home at 2 in the afternoon, the fluorescent lights humming their endless mechanical prayer above her head. She wore her uniform, white polo shirt, navy pants, both pressed with the kind of precision that came from owning only 2 sets of clothes and needing them to last. Her name tag, slightly crooked, read Sofia in faded letters. The facility smelled like disinfectant and overcooked carrots, that particular combination of cleanliness and decay that nursing homes never quite escaped, no matter how many times you mopped the linoleum floors. She had mopped these floors 1,000 times. Maybe more. The hallway stretched before her, lined with closed doors. Behind each one lived someone's grandmother, someone's father, someone's last hope that dignity in old age was still possible. Sofia moved through her rounds with the muscle memory of someone who had stopped counting the tasks months ago. She helped Mrs. Chen shuffle to the bathroom, her papery hands gripping Sofia's forearm like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Mrs. Chen did not speak English well. Sofia did not speak Mandarin. But they understood each other through the language of patience. At 4 o'clock, she fed Mr. Rodriguez his dinner. Mashed potatoes, steamed carrots, a piece of chicken so overcooked it might as well have been rubber. He ate slowly, his trembling hands occasionally dropping the fork. Sofia picked it up, rinsed it, handed it back, picked it up again. The room was very quiet except for the sound of his labored breathing and the fluorescent lights humming their song. When he finished, Sofia carried the tray to the kitchen. 3 spoonfuls of mashed potatoes remained in the bowl. She stood over the sink in the corner and ate them directly from the plate, cold and congealing. It was for 45. She would not eat again until tomorrow. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket, her cracked screen catching the kitchen light. Sunrise Hospital Billing Department. The 3rd call this week. She did not answer. She already knew what they would say. $35,000. Due in 7 days or her mother, Margaret Rose Harper, would be transferred from the cardiac unit to county care. County care was where people went to die quietly, without anyone important noticing. Sofia opened her banking app on that cracked screen, the numbers burning into her vision like a brand. $34. That was all that remained. Not 34,000. Not 3,400. 34. Every paycheck for the past 8 weeks had gone to cover the initial deposit for her mother's emergency triple bypass surgery. The surgery that saved her life. The surgery that would now destroy her life in a different way. At 10 o'clock, her supervisor, Mrs. Kowalski, a woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that never quite focused on anyone's pain, called Sofia into the office. The fluorescent lights were even harsher in there, casting everyone in shades of sickness. "We're cutting hours next month," Mrs. Kowalski said, not looking up from her paperwork. "Budget constraints." Sofia's stomach dropped like a stone into dark water. "How many hours?" Sofia asked, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. "About 30% of your shifts. We'll let you know which ones." Sofia nodded. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply nodded, swallowing the panic that rose in her throat like bile, and walked out of that office as if her entire world had not just collapsed into smaller and smaller pieces. Her shift ended at midnight. The facility grew quiet as she moved through the final checks, making sure every resident had water, that call buttons were within reach, that the night shift nurses had all their charts. The humming of the fluorescent light seemed louder in the silence. Her footsteps on the linoleum sounded like a countdown to something she could not name. She walked to her car in the parking lot under the dry October cold, breath visible in the bitter wind like a blade wrapped in ice. Dead leaves skittered across the asphalt, pushed by wind that smelled of metal and distance. The parking lot was nearly empty. The night security guard was 3 rows over, his flashlight pointing at nothing in particular. She did not see him until he stepped from between 2 vehicles. Douglas Hale. Her ex-boyfriend. 3 inches taller than she remembered, broader through the shoulders, his face twisted into something that was not quite human anymore. He wore a leather jacket and cologne that smelled like gasoline and rage. "You think you can report me?" His voice was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was the voice of someone absolutely certain of his right to destroy her. "You think those cops give a shit about you?" Sofia turned to run. Her car was 15 feet away. 15 feet between her and the locked doors and the horn she could press and the possibility of. He grabbed her throat. His hand was enormous, his fingers digging into the soft place where her neck met her shoulder. He slammed her backward against her own car, the impact driving the air from her lungs. She gasped, scratched, trying to claw at his face, but he was too strong, too solid, too certain. She screamed. The sound tore from her throat like something with teeth. His fist came down across her face. One punch. Her left eye exploded in pain, immediate swelling closing the world down to a tunnel of darkness and white light. She felt her uniform tear at the collar, felt the buttons scatter across the asphalt like broken teeth. "Those cops you talked to," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "They work for me, baby. You're alone. You hear me? You're completely alone." The security guard's flashlight appeared in the distance, sweeping slowly across the parking lot. Douglas released her, stepping backward, disappearing between vehicles like smoke. Sofia slid down her car door, her body hitting the cold metal in stages, as if her bones had lost their connection to her brain. She sat on the asphalt with her back against her car, trembling. Her hands came up to her throat. She could feel the shape of his fingers darkening into bruises even as she touched them. Her eye was already swelling shut, the world narrowing to a crack of vision. She could not go home. He knew where she lived. He had been there 100 times. She could not call the police, he had just told her they were his. She could not tell anyone because admitting she was in danger meant admitting she was weak, and weakness in this world was another form of death. She drove aimlessly through Las Vegas at 3 in the morning, the strip's lights blurring through her tears, neon signs smearing into watercolors of red and gold and blue. She drove past the casinos where people threw away their savings on the promise of transformation, past the hotels where people checked in to become someone different, past the streets where hope and desperation looked exactly the same. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. Her eye throbbed with a rhythm like a second heartbeat. At 3:22, she saw the sign. The Neon Diner. Its letters glowing pale green against the darkness, like a prayer someone had learned to spell. Sofia pulled into the parking lot and sat in her car for 3 minutes, breathing, trying to rebuild herself into someone who could walk inside without falling apart. The diner was nearly empty. An old couple sat in a corner booth, their shoulders touching. 2 truckers occupied a table near the window, eating pie and not speaking. The fluorescent lights here were the same as at the nursing home, but somehow they felt kinder. Sofia took a booth in the back, sliding into the seat facing the door. Her hands were still trembling. She kept them flat on the table, trying to convince her body that she was safe. A waitress approached. Not her. Sofia was the waitress now, though she didn't work here. Sofia was the broken thing that needed serving. The waitress was older, maybe 50, with a kind of tired that lives in bones. "What can I get you, honey?" the woman asked, and Sofia heard genuine concern in her voice, heard the small kindness that comes when one person who has suffered recognizes suffering in another. "Just coffee," Sofia said. "Black. And a glass of water." The woman returned with both, setting them down carefully, as if they were precious. Sofia wrapped her hands around the coffee mug and held on. The warmth was the only thing that felt real. Sofia sat in the back booth of the neon diner, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug she could not afford, and tried to disappear into the vinyl seat. The black and white checkered floor stretched away from her like a chessboard where every square held a different kind of pain. Fluorescent tubes hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly white light that made her bruises look darker, more real, impossible to deny. The smell of stale coffee and bacon grease hung heavy in the air, mixing with the sweet rot of a trash can that needed emptying. Outside the window, the neon open sign buzzed like an angry insect trapped in glass, casting pale green light across the empty parking lot. 3:22 in the morning. She knew the exact time because she had watched the clock on her car dashboard like it was counting down to her execution. Douglas had released her only 40 minutes ago, his fingers finally unclenching from her throat when a security guard's flashlight swept across the parking lot at the nursing home. She had not called the police. What was the point? The same officers who had taken his bribes before would take them again. An older waitress moved behind the counter, her name tag reading Diane, her face lined with the kind of exhaustion that comes from 30 years of closing shifts. When Diane turned and saw Sofia's face, the swollen eye, the finger-shaped bruises darkening her throat like a necklace made of violence, she stopped moving. The coffee pot froze mid-air. "Honey," Diane said, crossing to Sofia's booth with quick steps. "Do you need me to call someone?" Sofia shook her head, the small movement sending pain radiating through her neck. "Just coffee. Black. And water." Diane left, but not before squeezing Sofia's shoulder with a gentleness that nearly broke her. The coffee arrived moments later, steam rising like a small prayer, and Sofia held the mug between both palms because her hands would not stop shaking. The warmth was the only honest thing in the world right now. She did not notice the man in the corner booth at first. He sat with his back to the wall, a position chosen deliberately, wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than Sofia made in 4 months. His coffee sat untouched before him. His eyes were closed, but he was not sleeping. She could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed once, twice, 3 times on the table in an ancient rhythm. 2 men flanked the diner's entrance, large men in dark coats, watching the parking lot with the focus of hawks. Something dangerous sat at that corner table. Sofia had learned long ago to recognize danger. It lived in her muscles now, lived in the way her heart rate spiked at sudden sounds. The man's eyes opened. Dark eyes, storm gray in the fluorescent light, eyes that had seen things most people never would. A scar ran from the corner of his left eye down to his jaw, silver and thin like a blade had once tried to cut him open. He looked at Sofia for exactly 3 seconds, not staring, just assessing, the way someone checks the weather, and then looked away. Sofia tried to breathe smaller, less noticeably. A child emerged from the bathroom. Small, maybe 8 years old, with dark curls and a backpack decorated with faded unicorn stickers. She wore purple pajamas, and Sofia realized with a strange twist in her chest that this girl belonged to the dangerous man. This was his daughter. She could see it in the curve of her face, the way her eyes moved when she scanned the diner. The girl did not walk back to her father's booth. She saw Sofia. Children notice things adults train themselves not to see. The girl stopped, her small body going completely still, staring at Sofia's face the way someone stares at an accident, not from cruelty, but from the terrible honesty of childhood. "Did someone hurt you?" the girl asked. Her voice was small but carried a weight that made the air feel different. Sofia opened her mouth. Closed it. She tried to smile, and the attempt sent lightning through her swollen cheekbone. "I'm okay, sweetheart," Sofia whispered. The girl did not believe her. Instead, she slid into the booth across from Sofia without asking permission, reached into her backpack, and withdrew a stuffed rabbit so worn its fur had rubbed away to smooth fabric in patches. One ear had been sewn back on at least twice. "Mr. Whiskers helps when I'm scared," the girl said, placing the rabbit carefully on the table. "My daddy says people who hurt others are cowards. That they are small people pretending to be big." Across the diner, the man stood. His movement was smooth, controlled, the way predators move. One of his men started toward the girl, but the man raised one hand, and the gesture stopped everything, stopped the lieutenant mid-step, stopped the buzz of the neon sign, stopped time itself for one impossible moment. He watched his daughter sit with a stranger, a woman with bruises that told a story he understood in his bones. Sofia's hands trembled as she reached out and touched the stuffed rabbit. Its fur was soft from years of being held. The girl leaned closer, and her breath smelled like strawberry toothpaste and childhood. "Will the bad man come back?" Emma asked. The question hung in the air like a bell that would never stop ringing. Sofia did not answer because she did not know. The answer was probably yes. Douglas had always come back before. He would come back again. He would find her eventually, at work, at the grocery store, somewhere alone. He always found her. Across the diner, Luca Calabrese felt something shift in his chest. Something he had not felt since he was 8 years old himself, watching his mother cower in a kitchen corner while his father's fists taught her lessons about obedience. In that moment, facing a child who asked the one question his power could not answer, the man who controlled 3 states' worth of territory and violence discovered he was utterly helpless. The waitress, Diane, brought more water. She refilled Sofia's coffee without asking. In the way women recognize women who are drowning, Diane had understood immediately. She placed a hand on Sofia's shoulder again, a small anchor in an ocean of chaos. "You take your time, honey," Diane said quietly. "You stay as long as you need to." Emma pulled Mr. Whiskers back into her possession reluctantly, as if leaving the rabbit with Sofia was the only kindness she could offer. She returned to her father's booth, slid into the seat across from him, and Luca wrapped his arm around her shoulders. One of his men, Vinny, his oldest lieutenant, observed the scene and exchanged a glance with Franco that said, "In 17 years, I have never seen him touch anyone like that." The sun did not rise all at once. It arrived in gradual degrees, the sky shifting from black to deep blue, then blue to gray, then gray to something almost alive. Sofia watched the transformation from her booth in the back, and she thought about how darkness never surrenders all at once. It retreats in increments. It leaves reluctantly. At 4:47 in the morning, Emma emerged from the booth again. This time she ran to the counter and demanded a muffin. Diane, understanding the gravity of the moment, selected the largest one, wrapped it in a napkin, and watched Emma carry it back to her father like she had won something precious. Sofia watched the girl take a bite. Watched Emma's face go suddenly strange, her hand flying to her throat. Watched the beginning of something catastrophic. And in that moment, Sofia's training as a certified nursing assistant, her 2 years at the community college before money ran out, her certifications that cost money she did not have, all of it became real in a way it never had before. She moved. She had learned in her classes that anaphylaxis is a race against time. Every second matters. Every second is a choice between living and not living. Sofia crossed the diner in 4 steps, reached Emma in 5, and in her mind she was already moving through the protocol, assess the airway, check for difficulty breathing, get epinephrine, get to a hospital. Emma's eyes were wide with the terror that comes when your body betrays you, when breathing becomes a choice your body is failing to make. "Sweetheart, listen to me," Sofia said, kneeling beside the booth. "I need you to try to breathe very slowly. Can you do that? Can you breathe with me?" Emma's father stood so quickly his chair fell backward. The sound of it hitting the floor was like a gunshot in the small diner. Sofia stands in her apartment at 4 in the morning, shaking. The destroyed rooms surround her like evidence of a crime she did not commit. Her mattress lies overturned. Her kitchen drawers hang open, contents scattered across linoleum that has not been clean in months. Books are torn. Photographs are ripped. The message Douglas left is written in black marker across her bathroom mirror: "You can't hide from me." She calls the police. The same 2 officers arrive 43 minutes later. Officer Mitchell, a man with a face like weathered concrete, barely steps inside. Officer Torres, younger but harder, stands in her living room with his hands on his belt like he is waiting for her to confess to something. "Walk us through what happened," Mitchell says, not writing anything down. "Douglas Hale broke into my apartment. He ransacked everything. He left that message on the mirror." Torres exchanges a look with Mitchell. Not a good look. The kind of look that means they have already decided the story she is about to tell them is a lie. Douglas says you had a messy breakup. Says you're unstable. Making accusations. Torres moves through her apartment like he owns it, touching things without permission. Hard to know what's real when someone's emotional state is questionable. Sofia's hands close into fists. "My emotional state is terrified. Someone I reported to you broke into my home. We talked to Douglas," Mitchell says. His voice is flat, indifferent, like she is a weather report he is reading. "He says he hasn't seen you in 3 weeks. Says you've been calling him, showing up at his work. Says you're the one who's unstable." The words land like knives. Sofia stands very still. She remembers the bribes. The envelopes she saw him accept. The way Douglas walked into the precinct without handcuffs, without fear. "Are you going to file a report?" Sofia asks. "For what? You've got no proof he was here. No forced entry. Nothing." Torres pulls out his notepad and writes something she cannot see. "My advice? Get some help. Maybe talk to someone about what you're going through." They leave after 9 minutes. The door closes behind them with a soft click that sounds like a coffin lid sealing. Sofia stands alone in her destroyed apartment. The late hour presses down on her like a physical weight. She moves through the wreckage without seeing it, her feet carrying her to the bathroom. The mirror reflects a woman she barely recognizes. Yellow-green bruises ring her throat like a necklace of violence. One eye is still swollen, the white shot through with red. Her hair is matted from sweat and fear and 3 days without really sleeping. The bathtub is white, old, stained at the edges. She could fill it with hot water. She could slip under the surface and stop fighting. Stop trying. Stop carrying the weight of survival when survival costs more than she has. The thought is seductive in a way that frightens her. It whispers like a prayer. She sits on the edge of the tub, her entire body shaking. Her hands are shaking. Her breath is shaking. She begins to cry, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deeper than sadness, from the place where hope goes to die. And then she sees it. On the bathroom floor, knocked from the shelf during Douglas's rampage, lies a pair of baby shoes. White leather, impossibly small, worn at the toes from being held by so many desperate hands. Sofia picks them up. The leather is soft, fragile, irreplaceable. These shoes belonged to her when she was 3 months old, when her father left, when her mother was 23 years old and alone and terrified. Margaret Rose Harper had kept these shoes through every eviction, every night sleeping in the car, every shelter where they were assigned a cot and told not to make noise. Her mother had wrapped them in tissue paper and carried them like they were made of gold. Sofia cradles the shoes against her chest and something shifts. Something breaks open inside her that was supposed to stay broken. She stands. She washes her face. She looks at the woman in the mirror, bruised, exhausted, barely standing, and she makes a decision. She will not quit. That same night, 3 miles away, Douglas Hale receives a phone call on his cell phone. He is in his apartment, nursing a whiskey, confident in his arrangements. The police are his. Margaret Harrington is protecting him. Sofia is terrified and broken. The voice on the other end of the line is calm. Professional. Terrifying. Mr. Hale, this is Vincent. Mr. Calabrese would like to meet with you. Tomorrow, 10 p.m., the warehouse on East Fremont. Douglas laughs. The laugh of a man who does not understand what is happening to him. Who the hell is Calabrese? He hangs up. 12 miles away, in a penthouse that overlooks the entire city of Las Vegas, Margaret Harrington sits at her mahogany desk. She has just learned through her contacts that Luca Calabrese has paid Sofia Harper's mother's medical bills. All $35,000. Every single cent erased from existence like a debt that never existed. She smiles. It is the smile of a woman who has been playing chess for so long that she sees moves 3 steps ahead. She picks up her phone and calls Douglas. Time to increase pressure, she says when he answers. I want her desperate again. I want her running back to Calabrese. Make her beg. Douglas is eager. Douglas is violent. Douglas is the kind of man who mistakes permission for power. That night, Sofia begins her 3rd job. Diane had called her at the shelter that pays $5 an hour less than the hospital, the shelter that smells like industrial cleaner and broken dreams. Diane runs the Neon Diner with a fury that borders on love. She had hired Sofia on the spot when Sofia called, asking if there were any positions available. Diane had asked one question, running from something or running toward something. Sofia had answered, both. Now Sofia wears the diner uniform, pale yellow with a name tag that no longer feels like a mask, and she carries coffee and pie plates and takes orders from people who barely see her. She has worked double shifts for 48 hours. Her feet feel like they might detach from her body and float away. Her eyes are barely open. When her shift ends at 11 p.m., Douglas is waiting in the alley behind the diner. The October air is dry and cold. The kind of cold that bites. Sofia's breath becomes visible as she walks toward the employee parking lot, her keys in her hand, her phone in her pocket with Luca's card still in her messages. Douglas steps from the shadows. He is holding something. The light catches it. A knife, the kind with a blade that looks like it has done terrible things. You think some rich guy paying your bills makes you safe. His voice is full of something broken and dangerous. You think that makes you untouchable. He grabs her hair. The pain is immediate and blinding. He slams her against the brick wall of the diner and she hears her own scream before she feels the impact. The knife comes up. He presses it against her ribs, underneath her jacket, and she feels the point penetrate the fabric of her shirt. The blade is cold. The blade is real. Sofia is terrified. But she is also something else. She is a woman who has survived being invisible. Who has survived poverty and abuse and the kind of loneliness that kills people slowly. She whispers, her voice barely a breath. You should leave. Douglas laughs. And then Vinny and Franco materialize from the shadows like ghosts made solid. They move without hesitation, without mercy, without the slightest sound. Franco is on Douglas in less than a second. The knife is disarmed with a movement so efficient it looks like choreography. Douglas's wrist breaks with a crack that echoes through the alley and bounces off the brick walls. Douglas screams. The kind of scream that comes from bone breaking, from the body's betrayal, from the understanding that everything has changed. Vinny speaks into his phone. His voice is calm, professional, the voice of a man conducting business. Sir, we have him. Luca's voice comes through the speaker, and it is nothing like Sofia has ever heard. It is cold as January, hard as stone, final as death. Bring him. They drag Douglas toward the black SUV that waits at the mouth of the alley. Douglas is screaming, cursing, struggling, but it is the struggle of a man who has already lost. Sofia stands against the brick wall. Her entire body is shaking. Her hands are shaking. Her breath comes in gasps like her lungs have forgotten how to work. A second vehicle arrives. A car that costs more than Sofia will earn in her lifetime. The door opens and Luca Calabrese emerges. He is exactly as she remembers him, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably costs $3,000. His dark eyes find her immediately. He approaches carefully, deliberately, like he is approaching a wounded animal who might bolt. "Are you hurt?" he asks. Sofia shakes her head. She cannot speak. Her throat is closing. "How did you know?" The words come out barely a whisper. "How did you know he would come?" Luca's jaw tightens. "I have had men watching your apartment since the diner. When he followed you tonight, when you began your shift." He pauses. "I made a phone call." He reaches out. His hand is enormous, scarred, the hand of a man who has done terrible things. It hovers near her face like he is asking permission. She nods slightly and his fingers brush the bruise on her cheekbone. "Gentle. Impossibly gentle. No one touches you again," he says. His voice is quiet but it carries weight. "Do you understand me?" "No one. Ever again." Sofia understands. She nods. Luca gives instructions to Vinny. His voice returns to that cold, business tone. "Take her to the property on Oakey Boulevard. Stay with her. Nobody approaches. Nobody calls. Nobody speaks to her without my permission." He turns to leave. "Wait," Sofia calls out. "What are you going to do?" "To him?" Luca pauses. He does not turn around. Justice is not always about ending things quickly, Sofia. Sometimes it is about making sure the ending is thorough. He walks back to his car. The door closes with a soft, expensive sound. What happens next occurs in a warehouse on East Fremont, in the industrial part of the city where the streets are empty and the buildings are marked with spray paint and neglect. Luca does not kill Douglas Hale. Death would be too quick, too easy, too merciful. Instead, he sits in his office, leather furniture, art on the walls that cost six figures, windows that overlook nothing beautiful, and he makes 3 phone calls. The first is to Marco Salvatore, head of the Salvatore family. Bitter enemies for 15 years. Rivals who have lost men to each other, who have conducted their war in silence and blood. "Marco," Luca says when the phone connects. "I have a gift for you. A man named Douglas Hale. He has been selling information about your shipments to the federal authorities. Specific details. Names. Routes. Everything. This is a lie." But Luca plants evidence. He has Vinny deliver it to Marco's men, photographs and documents and recordings, all forgeries, all devastating. All enough to convince Marco that Douglas is a rat. The second call is to Officers Mitchell and Torres. "Your arrangement with Douglas Hale is finished," Luca says. His voice is pleasant. "You work for me now, or within 24 hours, Internal Affairs receives recordings of every bribe you have accepted. Every conversation. Every time you destroyed evidence. Every time you looked the other way while a woman reported assault and you did nothing." The line goes silent. "Do we have an understanding?" Luca asks. "Yes," Officer Mitchell says. His voice is shaking. The third call is to Margaret Harrington. The phone rings and rings. She does not answer. Luca does not yet know her involvement. But he will. Douglas Hale's last coherent memory is being handed to the Salvatore family. Marco's men dragging him screaming into a white van. He is never seen again. The missing persons report is filed, then closed. Some people disappear in Las Vegas and nobody asks questions. Some people disappear and it is like they were never born at all. The next morning, Margaret Harrington learns through her contacts that Douglas has vanished. She sits in her penthouse, fury rising like a fever, and she realizes that Luca has made his move. She realizes that her pawn has been removed from the board. She realizes that she has underestimated him. She sits alone in her luxury prison and she makes a decision. She needs a new strategy. She needs a new approach. She needs to strike at what Luca loves most, and she needs to do it before he realizes what she wants. She picks up her phone and makes a call to someone she has not spoken to in months. Someone dangerous in ways that violence cannot measure. Word count, 1,998. Her mother flatlines at 2:24 in the morning. Sofia stands outside the cardiac unit, phone trembling in her hand, watching through the window as 3 nurses surround her mother's bed. Margaret Rose Harper's chest rises and falls mechanically now, all her own breath stolen by the machine beside her. Sofia does not cry. Her tears have dried up somewhere between the charity gala and this hospital corridor, somewhere between discovering she was a weapon and realizing she never stopped being one. A surgeon appears. Dr. Raymond Chen, expensive-looking despite the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. He takes Sofia's arm gently. Your mother is stable. The surgery is scheduled for 5 in the morning. 7 hours. He pauses. The pause contains everything. The new surgeon, the one your friend arranged. He's the best in Nevada. If anyone can save her, it's him. Sofia nods because speaking might break something inside her that cannot be repaired. She sits in the waiting room alone, surrounded by fluorescent lights that turn her skin the color of old paper. $3,000 sits in her savings account. $70,000 is what her mother needs. Margaret Harrington's words replay on a loop in her mind. You really think Calabrese will help you now? The answer should be no. After Sofia rejected him, after she went cold and silent, after she called him a criminal to his face, the answer should be no. But Sofia thinks about Emma asking, will the bad man come back? Sofia thinks about a man who sat beside her in a booth at 3:22 in the morning and never made her feel like a problem to be solved. Sofia thinks about iced coffee appearing outside her door every Sunday for 6 months, always her favorite blend even though she never told anyone. She pulls up his number, memorized from months of deleted texts. She takes a breath. The hospital is so quiet at this hour you can hear the fluorescent lights humming, a high-pitched whine that sounds like the world breaking. Sofia dials. Luca answers on the first ring. Sofia. Just her name, but she hears everything in it, relief, hurt, hope struggling beneath careful control. Are you safe? My mother, Sofia says, and her voice fractures like ice under weight. She collapsed. She needs emergency cardiac surgery. $70,000 and I don't have it. I have $3,000. She stops. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for pushing you away. I'm sorry Sofia. His voice is firm, cutting through her spiral like a knife through dark water. Your mother's surgery is already arranged. Dr. Chen called me an hour ago. Everything is covered. The world tilts. Sofia cannot speak. How did you? I never stopped watching over you, Luca says quietly. Even when you made it clear you didn't want me to. Even when you rejected my calls and deleted my messages. Even when Margaret Harrington was working to convince you I was a monster. He pauses. I know what she did, Sofia. Vinny figured out her involvement last week. The way she approached you, the charity gala setup, the perfectly timed collapse. It was engineered. Sofia's hands shake. She told me to testify against you. She said if I helped the FBI. I know. How could you possibly know? Because Margaret Harrington has been plotting this for 6 months, Luca says, and now there's something cold in his voice, something that reminds Sofia why men fear him. She needed leverage. She tried to use Douglas Hale. When that failed, she tried to use you. She believed that if she could turn you against me, if she could convince you that I was dangerous and she was a savior, she could flip you as a witness. He stops. What she underestimated was your strength. I don't feel strong, Sofia whispers. You survived Douglas alone. You saved my daughter while you were barely standing. You rebuilt your entire life from $34 and a will that most people don't possess in their whole bodies. Luca's voice carries absolute certainty. You're the strongest person I know, Sofia. Margaret bet on turning you into a weapon. Instead, you turned yourself into a shield. The machines in the cardiac unit beep steadily beyond the glass. Sofia closes her eyes. I researched you, she says. What you do? The arrests, the investigations, the things people say about you. The blood. Silence stretches between them, heavy as stone. And? Luca asks finally. And I'm still calling you. Sofia's breath catches. I'm still here. I'm still choosing to ask for your help. She hears him exhale, heard the release of a breath he's been holding for months. 3 hours, he says. I'm coming to the hospital. Franco is already there, in the hallway. If you need anything, water, coffee, to sit in silence while you fall apart, he's your shadow until I arrive. Luca? Rest, Sofia. Let me handle this. The line goes quiet. 40 minutes later, Franco appears in the waiting room wearing a dark suit that probably costs more than Sofia's monthly rent. He's tall, built like a monument to pain, with grey threading through his dark hair. He sits 2 chairs away from her and says nothing. His presence is its own kind of comfort, a wall between her and the world. At 4:15, Luca arrives, and the air changes. The waiting room suddenly feels smaller, compressed by the weight of his attention. He's wearing charcoal slacks and a white shirt open at the collar, a cashmere coat hanging from his shoulders like his walk directly out of some glossy magazine spread about powerful men and their terrible choices. His eyes are storm dark, focused entirely on her. Sofia stands and he closes the distance between them without hesitation. He takes her face in his hands, gentle, as if she's something precious and fragile, and examines her with an intensity that steals her breath. You're shaking, he says. My mother is going to be fine. Dr. Chen is the best in the Western United States. I made calls. He's cleared his entire morning. Your mother is his only patient today. Luca's thumb brushes across her cheekbone. You need to eat something. I can't. Not negotiable. Franco. Franco appears with a warm container of soup that somehow smells like heaven. Sofia doesn't remember him leaving. Luca guides her back to the chair, sits beside her, and waits while she drinks because sometimes the strongest man in the room is the one who knows when to be still. At 5:48 a.m., Dr. Chen arrives. He shakes Luca's hand with genuine respect. The surgery will take 4 to 5 hours. She's stable now. We'll know more when we come out of the operating room. He looks at Sofia. You should try to sleep. I can't, Sofia says. Then you should sit with people who love you, Dr. Chen replies, and something in his words carries weight. He knows, somehow. Everyone seems to know that Luca Calabrese is sitting in this waiting room, that a woman with bruises fading from her throat is the reason an empire's attention is focused entirely on one cardiac unit in Las Vegas. The surgery begins at 5:45 a.m. Luca and Sofia sit in the waiting room as dawn breaks over the Nevada desert, streaking the sky pink and gold. Outside, the city is waking up. Inside, time moves like molasses, like the world has slowed so that every second stretches into eternity. Why didn't you tell me? Sofia asks sometime around hour 2. That you were still protecting me. Would you have believed me? Luca's voice is steady. You had decided who I was. A criminal. A man with blood on his hands. And you were right, I am those things. But I'm also someone who would burn cities to protect you. Those two things can exist in the same man, Sofia. The darkness and the devotion. She looks at him. Really looks at him. At the silver threading through his hair that suggests a man who's carried heavy things for a long time. At the scar running from his eye to his cheekbone that tells a story of survival. At his hands, which are large and scarred and gentle when he holds her. I was afraid, Sofia says. Not of what you do. Of how much I needed you. Of how much it would hurt if you decided to stop caring. Luca takes her hand and places it against his chest. His heartbeat is strong, steady, real. I've been caring since 3:22 in the morning, Sofia. I will be caring when we're old. I will still be caring when they put us in the ground. He meets her eyes. This isn't a debt. This never was. This is a choice I make every single day. At 9:32 a.m., Dr. Chen walks out of the operating room. He's smiling. Margaret Rose Harper survived the surgery. Her heart is repaired. The prognosis is excellent. She'll be awake in an hour. Sofia collapses against Luca, and he catches her, holds her while she sobs, not tears of sadness anymore, but the release of survival, the breaking open of someone who's been holding herself together with nothing but willpower and faith. His hand strokes her hair, and Franco quietly excuses himself, giving them the privacy that lieutenants give their bosses in moments like this. Thank you, Sofia whispers against his chest. Thank you, thank you, thank you. No more running, Luca says. It's not a request. No more pushing me away. No more believing Margaret Harrington's lies. You belong with me, Sofia. With us. With Emma. With your mother when she's strong enough. With the life we're going to build. What life? Sofia pulls back just enough to see his face. What kind of life can we have? You. I'm a man who loves you, Luca says simply. Everything else is negotiable. Meanwhile, in her penthouse across the city, Margaret Harrington receives a phone call from her lawyer. Federal agents are at her door. They have a warrant. They have evidence, recordings, financial documents, testimony from people she thought were loyal. She's facing conspiracy charges, witness tampering, fraud. 40 years if convicted. She tries to run. The agents catch her at the elevator. By noon, the news is streaming across every channel. The elegant widow, the philanthropist, the society fixture, led away in handcuffs, her empire collapsing like a house built on sand. By evening, her assets are frozen. By tomorrow morning, no one will remember her name as anything but a criminal. 3 months later, Sofia stands in a classroom at UNLV wearing scrubs that still smell like detergent. She's one of 4 students accepted into the accelerated nursing program, one of 2 working full-time while completing coursework. Her mother is home now, healthy, strength returning daily. She tends a small garden in the apartment Luca owns, the one he still refuses to charge rent for. Emma visits every weekend. She's 7 now, and she draws pictures of Sofia in her sketchbook, crude crayon renderings but unmistakably Sofia in her nursing clothes, saving people, making things better. On a Sunday morning in October, exactly 1 year after the charity gala, Sofia arrives at the Neon Diner for coffee and finds Luca already seated in their booth, the back corner where everything began. He's nervous in a way she's never seen before. His hands move restlessly across the table, and there's a small box sitting between the salt and pepper shakers. Hi, Sofia says, sliding into the booth across from him. Hi. Luca takes a breath. He opens the box slowly, and inside are tiny white leather baby shoes, restored with meticulous care, preserved like precious things. Emma helped me find a specialist. Your mother told me about their significance. Sofia's hand covers her mouth. Those shoes. The one she kept from the shelter, from when her mother chose to stay, from when survival meant anything at all. You kept these because they reminded you that survival is its own kind of courage, Luca says quietly. They reminded you that your mother chose to stay when everything told her to run. That she chose love and hardship over safety and abandonment. He reaches across the table and takes her hand. I'm choosing to stay, Sofia. Not because of obligation or debt. Because you make me believe I can be more than what I was. Because you look at all the darkness and you don't flinch. Because Emma loves you. Because your mother trusts me. Because family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. Sofia cries, real tears this time, the kind that heal instead of break. Yes, she says. Yes to all of it. Outside, the October wind rattles the diner's windows. Inside, it's warm, and for the first time in both their lives, they're home. If this story moved you, drop a like and share it with someone who needs to remember that strength isn't about never falling, it's about who helps you stand back up. Subscribe because tomorrow we're bringing you another story that will remind you what real love looks like. Comment below, what would you have done in Sofia's position? We read every single one. We wish you good health, joy, and days filled with peace and happiness. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Goodbye, and we'll see you again in the next video.